We're communicating pretty much all day, every day, right? It's so automatic that we almost never stop and think about how it actually works. But really digging into the mechanics behind our messages, that can be the difference between being heard and being totally misunderstood. So let's just dive right in. What is communication really? I mean, it seems simple enough on the surface. It's just talking and listening. Or is it? Turns out that's only scratching the surface of a much deeper and way more fascinating process. Okay, so if you look it up, the textbook definition is something like this. It's a process, an exchange of information, and there's always a purpose, right? Whether you're trying to inform someone that a meeting's been moved, persuade a friend to see your side of things, or just entertain a group with a great story, there's a goal. This is our starting point. But here's the thing. As we're about to find out, it is so much more complicated than just the words we pick. In literally every single interaction, there's this hidden message being sent, and a lot of the time, we don't even realize we're sending it. And this is a really, really important difference to get. On one hand, you've got your intended communication. This is the stuff we plan to say, our goal-oriented messages. But then, there's the unintended communication. All those little accidental signals we send with our body language, our tone of voice. Oh yeah, we've all been on one side of this or the other, right? The words say, I'm fine, but that eye roll says something totally different. So which one do you believe? Yeah, exactly. That unintended signal, it's powerful. And you know what? It almost always tells the real story. So how are we sending all these messages, both the ones we mean and the ones we don't? Well, it turns out we all have this basic toolkit with 4 primary channels that we're using constantly. Let's break them down. First up, we've got written communication. This is everything from a super formal work memo to a quick chat message to a friend. The big thing to remember here is that it's permanent. Once you write it down, whether it's in an email or a private journal entry, it creates a record. It's out there. Then there's verbal communication. This is probably what most of us think of first. It's our most direct, person-to-person channel. Face-to-face chats, phone calls, stuff like that. What makes this one so special is how immediate it is. You get instant feedback, and you can adjust what you're saying right there on the spot. Channel 3 is nonverbal. And ooh, this is a big one. This is where so much of that hidden meaning we talked about lives. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Your tone, your gestures, your posture, even your use of space and time sends a message. Think about it. Showing up late to a meeting. You're communicating something loud and clear without saying a single word. And last but not least, we have the visual channel. Just think about how fast a simple graph can show a really complex trend, or how a map can get you where you need to go without any words at all. Visuals are like our communication shortcut. They're super powerful and incredibly efficient. Okay, so we've got the channels down, but what's the actual journey? How does a single message get from my brain all the way over to yours? It's actually a pretty wild trip. It all starts with the source. That's the person with an idea. They create a message, and then they have to do something called encoding. Basically, turning that thought into actual signals, like words or pictures. That signal travels through a channel, and on the other end, the receiver has to decode it, interpret those signals to get the original idea. And get this, all of this happens in the blink of an eye. Now, the way we think about this whole process has changed over time. The really early model, the Shannon-Waver one, saw it as a simple one-way street, kind of like a radio broadcast, just sending a signal out. But the more modern transactional model, it sees it for what it really is, a two-way process. It's more like a dance than a speech with constant feedback going in both directions. Just think about your own life for a minute. That easy back and forth you have with your friends, that's the transactional model in action, 100%. But a formal lecture from a teacher, yeah, that can feel a lot more like that old school one-way Shannon-Weaver model, can it? The situation, the context, it changes everything. So this whole process seems pretty straightforward, right? But here's the catch. It's also really fragile. At any point in that journey from source to receiver, things can go wrong. Let's take a look at the common barriers that make our messages just fall apart. These barriers are often just called noise, and they can be just about anything. It could be literal physical noise like a jackhammer outside your window. But more often, it's internal noise, a cultural difference where a simple gesture means something offensive, or using a bunch of jargon your audience has no clue about. Even the power dynamic between a boss and an employee can totally distort the message. So, we know all the ways it can go wrong. How in the world do we make sure it goes right? Well, this brings us to the most important part, building your very own toolkit to become a master communicator. So how do we actually do this? Well, it really boils down to a few key rules. First, know your purpose before you even open your mouth. Support what you're saying with facts, not just your feelings. Be concise. Seriously, everyone's busy. And maybe the most important one of all, adjust to your audience. The way you'd explain something to an expert is going to be completely different from how you'd explain it to a total beginner, right? But it's not just about being effective. Our communication also has to be ethical. And this isn't just some nice-to-have idea. It's the moral foundation that makes trust and real connection even possible. It's what governs our behavior in every single interaction. And these are the core principles of that. We're talking about acting with integrity, respecting diversity, upholding freedom of expression, and promoting access to information. It's about being open-minded and, crucially, practicing accountability for our words. These are the absolute pillars of responsible, effective, and trustworthy communication. And that really brings us to our final and maybe most important takeaway. You are always communicating. Every single word you say, every gesture you make, even your silence, it's all sending a message. So as you're sitting here right now, what are you communicating? Just being aware of that, that's the very first step to mastering this whole art.